if given enough time and budget, you can build anything. It's only a question of how much time do you want to spend on unique things, unique problems to your business versus things that are undifferentiated or that are very similar to others that have to deal with.
Hi, everybody. This is Angelique, and this is Ascend Stories of Scale. Today, I'm joined by Wael Elsahhar, co-founder and CEO of MidLyr, building bank-grade AI infrastructure to automate complex regulated workflows. With leadership at Imprint, Amazon Pay, and McKinsey, Wael brings deep operational experience to one of the Fintech's hardest problems, making AI actually work in compliance-heavy environments. Yeah. Thanks for joining us, Wael.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Let's talk about what made you, with all the background that you've had on the operation side of things, want to build MidLyr.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are a lot of things I can go to, and there are a lot of right answers and wrong answers, and what you tell investors and what you tell your team and all that stuff.
The real one.
Exactly. If I bring it all the way back, I would say I'm an engineer by training. Haven't practiced engineering as much as others, obviously, but there's something around solving hard problems that is very appealing to that mindset. So as you pointed out, I spent a lot of my career, most of my career in financial services, in different parts of it, in strategy, operations, product, engineering. And over again, it was very obvious that one of the hardest things in financial services is everything that has to do with regulations and compliance. I like to joke, like engineering is hard, but it's not impossible. Like you need to figure out how to build a system and you do it. But figuring out where we're introducing regulatory risk or what workflows might cause unintended consequences 2 years down the road, that's a very tough problem. And it leads to some caricature of kind of banks being very slow and very stodgy. And when you get deeper into it, it's just a really tough problem to figure out what the regulators want today, what the regulators will want in a year from now, and what to do, what's the right thing to do for your customers. Over and over again, I found it a very appealing problem set. There hadn't been a lot of solutions there. With AI coming into the fore, it was very obvious that AI can help, and we can get a little bit deeper into what that means. So it felt like hard problem, right time, right team. Like what's not to kind of like about that?
So you and your co-founder, Ruchin, build the core banking infrastructure at Imprint together.
Yeah.
How does that co-founding with someone you've already scaled a company before help with how you're doing now at MidLyr?
In a very particular sense, we like to joke about kind of having high tolerance for pain is a prerequisite for the job.
Yeah.
And if anyone who's familiar with bank infrastructure and building core banking knows that it's just a constant pain. You're always discovering corner cases, things that you haven't thought about before. You're always iterating, and every mistake is very visible. You have like millions of dollars kind of on the line, trust, security, a lot of things kind of can go wrong. So working with someone who's been through all of that and developed the thick skin required to deal with that.
I love the thick skin required.
Exactly. And then startups have their own challenges. But it's a very similar kind of challenge. I think one of the big things, and we'll get into the product in a second, we're trying to bring in the most engineering and scientific power into a problem that traditionally hasn't received that. Mm-hmm. And I cannot find like a better partner to do that with.
With most of the AI tools being deployed in banks today, and most of them are not grounded in their own interpretations of regulations, what risk does that create?
Yeah.
From at least your point of view?
I think the immediate risk for most of the companies in that space, frankly, is that there's a lot of hesitance to use these tools or buy new tools if it's not proven would be basically comfortable putting their job on the line for, right? Yeah, that's just such a high bar. The longer term risk is once we kind of cross over that chasm and there are a lot of people using those tools, and then kind of a few months, a few years from now, something systemic happens, like the tools break in a certain way where it causes like bigger issues. And most of the compliance professionals we talk to are thinking about that.
Yeah, data leaks and all of that.
Exactly. Testing can do so much. It's very hard to know for sure what's going to happen when you deploy those tools and you depend on them much more. What we do, and this gets a little bit into how we're different and how we're trying to do things differently, is that we actually spend a lot of time using human experts, going through real cases, analyzing and grading them to make sure that everything that our agents can tell a customer or a team member is accurate, is applying the right interpretation of the law, and is citable and auditable. But a great answer is not enough. You have to tell me why you came up with that answer. You have to show me kind of your work. And that's a lot of what we invest our time in. So every week we're going through thousands of real cases. There's a lot of sources for complaints that go into banks through the CFPB or through other sources. We take those, we have our agents work through them, and then we have humans who are expert in compliance who are going through each one of those cases, grading it and figuring out kind of how can we make it better? How can we make sure that we're interpreting the laws correctly?
And why does it matter? For example, a financial institution cannot build this kind of technology internally.
I'd just like to start with saying that if given enough time and budget, you can build anything. It's only a question of how much time do you want to spend on unique things, unique problems to your business versus things that are undifferentiated or that are very similar to others that have to deal with. But the challenge is, and why traditionally this has been a very hard problem to solve, is that which rule to apply and which network rule to apply is very contextual. It depends on what's the product, what's the context of the company, and so on. And that's where we feel the layer of intelligence that we're building into MidLyr enables us to route kind of requests towards the right set of regulation, not just based on the company context, but based on the product that this request is coming against and based on the context of the request. So if we are trying to analyze a customer service message, that's a very different context from someone internally is trying to work a case and has a question about how to handle it. So that's what we're referring to with the regulatory graph, which is the idea of which rules to apply in which situations and in which context.
How do you make an agent auditable? Can you explain that a little bit more?
It's just the kind of the visibility, the logging, right? Like I create an AI agent. 2 days from now, I want to make sure that I know what they told the user, right? So that's just simple logs. Everyone has it. Everyone does it. When we talk about auditability, we're talking about that chain of thinking and reasoning that led the agent to say this thing to the customer or to make that recommendation to the internal operations team. What we mean by that is a list of steps that the agent took in order to come up with this recommendation, for example, to give the refund to that customer in this dispute. So when you go deeper into it and you try to kind of break that into pieces, you will see that, well, there's some network rules that it had to reference to say like when should we give that kind of refund to the customer. It has to have some internal SOP at the company that it used to say, like, in our cases, in our company, here are the cases that we provide professional credit, here's the cases that we don't, and so on.
Got it.
So all of that is what we call auditability. Basically, all the inputs that led the agent to say one line answer.
Designing MidLyr, like, I know you're targeting FIs, but is there a specific size where they have to fit to be able to work with you guys? Like, who's your target audience for the product?
Consumer banking in the US is something like $6 to $10 trillion market in terms of revenue. 60% of that revenue goes into non-customer facing operations.
Yeah.
Right. So we're talking about
the
like
back office.
Back office. Back office is massive. And it's not just the problem I'm describing, but that's one core problem there. So it's a huge market. So for us, that's all our market space. That's where we want to be. If you drill down on who we are selling to be extremely open with you, it's something that we are kind of learning our way into. Our current best understanding is that we have a decision maker who is the chief compliance officer who basically wants to make sure that this work happens and this work happens correctly. But there's an economic buyer and someone who has the immediate need that will go research and find us and decides to work with us. And that's typically some combination of engineers, product managers, and operations managers. People who are actually sitting there saying, like, how can we build this? We have all these requirements from compliance. We don't know how can we make sure that what we're building, this new agent we're experimenting with, will have the best context or will provide the best auditability. Those are the people that we're trying to solve problems for today.
Got it. With all of the long sales cycle, legal reviews, RFPs, and all of the fun stuff, how are you preparing MidLyr to enter into that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a big part of it is just awareness, right? Like knowing that that's the case helps put you in the right mindset. I would say that's typically the case. And that's typically the case in most enterprise kind of products. I think one place to start is to just recognize that that's the case. Have the expectation that it will take time. It's a relationship business, so you need to invest in that. You need to show up. People need to know you, and you need to put something out there for people to benefit from. Like we get most our engagement and most of our introductions from research that we've put out, for example. Recently, a lot of people in banks is that there is definitely a desire over the last few months to do something different. Like the people back in banks are not living a different planet. They read the same news. They know
see what's going on.
Exactly. They know AI is coming. They're trying to figure out how to deploy AI correctly and responsibly. And actually, I would say over the last 2 or 3 months, there is this feeling, again, in a lot of parts of the economy, but even in banks, that we can build anything, right? And this whole like code moment where everyone's just like, I can do anything.
Vibe coding.
Exactly, vibe coding. The bigger issue is that the form and the formats of those solutions is changing very quickly. Like even in our very short kind of life, we started by trying to build the full solution for customers and saying like, we're going to have this workflow that will work for you. It will solve all complaints, solve all disputes. And we have some design partners who really like it and are using it. But what we're learning is that because people can build anything now or they feel they can build anything now, what we're much more focused on is to enable them to do that responsibly and in a way that satisfies their compliance people, satisfies their risk people, but doesn't slow them down.
From what I've seen, when you integrate a bank, usually it takes 6 months to a year, given that you have to translate, with whatever language they have and stuff. But from what I saw on a high level, you integrate really quickly. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Every customer we had, we started with that assumption. They said like, oh, it's going to take forever. And we always launched in less than 2 to 3 weeks. And most of the time it was just our team walking you through how to do things. There are a couple of things I would say. First one's just to put it out there. Integrating into different data sources is becoming easier. Like it's an easier problem with AI and so on. But more importantly, the way we designed the product is that we designed it to work in real organizations. And what I mean by that is, imagine you hire someone into your team. And then the first day, you're basically telling them, here's kind of where the email is, here's where the document store is, here's our Figma files, whatever the set of things that they need to do. But invariably, a week or 2 later, they will think about something that was not in their orientation guide, and they'll come to you being like, how do we pull this data? Or like this CRM field, I don't understand it. And you explain it to them, and then it goes into their knowledge, and they'll kind of start integrating that into how they operate. We designed our AI agents to work in the same way. So one of the big features for us from day one is that we need the agent to be able to go to people and ask for help. And that's how we're able to start very quickly.
So it's learning on its own once you plug it in.
Exactly. Okay. That solves a lot of problems. One is if you don't integrate that data source or it's very messy, you can start getting value by having the agent go to the data team and say, can you give me that data? And they'll give it to you and you'll start working on it and you'll show value. But that also enables us to get the signal that we're getting a lot of requests, or our agent is making a lot of requests of this kind. Let's go and build the integration for that proactively and then surprise the customer by saying, we actually now have the Snowflake integration, right? Go turn it on. The third thing, which is actually the most valuable in the long term, is that a lot of the stuff that actually happens in the organization is not stuff that people beforehand are saying, these are the data sources, you need to integrate with them, this is how it will work. The most valuable data is sitting in a Google sheet somewhere that someone built kind of like a year ago and they kept updating it. But getting that knowledge, because we're trying to bootstrap that knowledge, is super valuable because we're building basically almost like a digital twin of your process
Yeah.
into our agent as well. So we're solving the integration problem, but we're also solving a process visibility problem.
There's going to be a few CTOs, potentially operators of banks listening to this.
Yeah.
Is there a specific size or like requirement for them to be able to use MidLyr and actually get the return of investment? Or you think this is for everybody? Who is the right fit for MidLyr?
Yeah, I would say there are two use cases that we've seen where MidLyr is very valuable. The first one is for bigger banks. They typically have tens to hundreds of people working in different functions under the label of operations. For there, the value of MidLyr is very clear. You can get real saving in terms of either people that you have today or people that you might not need to hire in the future because you are putting your process into MidLyr. You have the safety blanket that it is compliant, that it is auditable and all that stuff. So this is where the saving is clearest. We are seeing somewhere between 70 to 80% reduction on the workflows where our customers have deployed us. And more importantly, we're seeing also a reduction in cycle time. So we're not only reducing effort, we're reducing the speed at which you can come back to the customer and resolve issues for the customers. So that's one use case. And for that, I would say, yeah, anything from like a regional bank up, like there is real money to be saved there because they probably have more than like 5, 6, 7, 10 people working there.
And what are the 2 to 3 metrics that you can highlight that MidLyr provide to?
So where they get ROI is from reduction in two things. One is manual touches on the workflows that we're deployed in, and two is cycle time, which is how long it takes you from the start of the workflow to the end of the workflow. So to use complaints as an example, we have one design partner where they got 70% reduction in manual touches.
Oh, wow.
So they're spending 70% less time on the problem. And then they got the time to resolution from 13 days on average to 2 days. So basically they can come back to the customer, or a lot of time the complaints actually they're responding to a regulator or a sponsor bank. They can come back to them much faster. The metrics that we also insist on sharing with them is accuracy and drive to resolution, which are metrics we define to say that when our agent actually does this, they're not just pinging random people in your team asking for help. How much of what of the work is actually being done by the agent? And over there, we're consistently above 80%. So the agent is not taking too much of your time. And also our accuracy, we just published a paper about that, is consistently above 90%. Like we're currently at 91% in terms of correct interpretation of the laws or the rules to the problems.
How are you making sure that the system is up to date to the latest and greatest?
We have an automated process to monitor all the sources of potential regulations and rules. So just to be clear on this, there are regulations, there are federal regulations, but there's also agency guidance. So like the CFPB or the FINRA or whatever, they'll put out kind of guidance. There is enforcement actions, which are decisions that they made against kind of other participants in the market. And there's also interagency guidance, and there are a lot of state guidances, right? Like there are 50 states. Each one of them has the ability to...
Yeah, that's actually what's crazy. You have the local...
Yes,
regulation,
the federal
and also
state.
have,
Yeah, exactly. All of those are sources. And what we've built over the last few months is an automated way to check consistently every day for new rules or new publications from those agency exam manuals. Like we have like thousands of documents that we're monitoring now. Exactly. But then once you get all those documents, and that's why it's very hard to build internally, if you just stuff that in the context of an agent, it will not be able to operate on an LLM-based agent. So what we do is what I was describing earlier, where every week as well, we run thousands of real cases through the CFPB database and BBB and a bunch of other sources. Assume you're working for Bank of America. Assume you got that complaint. How are you going to resolve it?
Yeah.
And then we have a human who sits there, reads the output, and says, well, the agent did well, or the agent missed that Bank of America is. So we take that and push it back into the training, push it back into how we're tagging our graph nodes, so that the next time we have a similar complaint, it is actually handled correctly.
What are the things or strategy that you guys are doing to make sure like you position MidLyr that it's not just another tool out there, that it actually solves problems?
Well, the biggest one is just showing it, right? So you just need to do the work. You need to work with your design partners, get the results, show people the results. And that ultimately is what kind of people are going to believe in. Like, no one wants to use a product that doesn't work. They want to use a product that works.
Yeah.
So for us, that's the most important thing. It's a very tough balance, but we're trying to have empathy with our customers who might not be as in the know and plugged in into every latest thing that's happening in
You're
AI.
educating them in the process.
Exactly. So we need to have one foot in that world, but another foot in the reality of the tools that they're using. A lot of those banks are still working on like Fiserv systems from the 90s.
I believe you.
Right? So it's you cannot just be too removed from that and say, well, AI is going to do everything. Yes, AI at some point is going to do everything, but our job is actually to take people through that journey as well. So we try to be very purposeful about it. We try to spend a lot of time with our customers. When you do that, you hear less about kind of AI noise. And then at night and weekends, we catch up on the news and make sure that we know what's going on.
I've had a great conversation on that actually just last week, wherein like it's one thing that AI is changing how we work, but it's also another building a tool or a technology around what people are used to. I know there's a lot of financial institutions that's also wanting to ride the wave of AI, but there's also a few. In your opinion, like, where's the lowest risk for a bank or financial institution to start working with AI?
Enterprise AI started 2-3 years ago. Everyone went to customer service right away. And I was CTO of kind of Imprint at the time, and I was sitting there being like, this is like the hardest thing I can do. I see the value. And it's one of those things like from the outside, yeah, of course, like you save a lot of money if it works correctly, but making sure that it works correctly and doesn't create new risks and new liabilities is really hard. So what I advise everyone, and well, that's why we're starting the company there, is focus on your internal operations first. What you're trying to trade is not, oh, I used to provide this level of service to customers, and now I'm going to just YOLO it on an AI agent to try to like make it like 50% more effective. Keep the service to the customer as good as it can, but experiment on your internal operations. If you have a process that you have 5 people on who are spending 20 hours every month or every week on it, that's probably a really good place to start. Because what's the worst that can happen? The worst that could happen is that you don't get the saving. Fine, like now we know. Most probably, if you're working with the right partners, you're going to get the savings. And in terms of just the human part of it, we hear it all the time about like, oh, I have this team. I like my team. I don't want to like get rid of my team. And my answer is always that you have, most of the companies you work with, you have so much growth ahead of you. You can get the same people to work on more interesting things. And believe me, like they would love that rather than do the same disputes for the 15th time a day or the same complaint for the 20th time. So you have a lot of opportunities to redeploy people towards stuff that is much more interesting. To be much more specific, the areas that we really believe in is around complaints management, because that's the best signal for where things are breaking internally and where you can get a huge improvement on what it takes to resolve a complaint correctly. And we're really good at it. And we've done it with a lot of customers. And then there are anything around testing is where we're also like discovering a lot of use cases. So if you have your compliance team spending a lot of time listening to calls or reviewing loan files or doing any sort of like just sampling to make sure we're looking for certain keywords and so on, that's where our workflows just work so much better. And as I said, like your team will be very grateful not having to do that all day.
Amazing. And where do we find MidLyr, or if people are interested in talking to you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's midlyr.ai. You can find me on LinkedIn. Just search my name. It's my email is wael@midlyr.ai.
Yeah, we'll link it to you guys.
Yeah, so please reach out to me at any time. Building a company is really interesting, and you always obviously want to sell, but I love talking to people who are just like, I'm thinking out loud about this. These are the best conversations. So if you're still like in the stage where I don't know how I'm going to deploy AI,
where do you start? Yeah,
exactly. Where does it start? I promise you, I'll listen. I'll give you some good ideas, and I'm not going to try to sell you too hard. I'll try to sell eventually, but not too hard.
Amazing. Thank you again, Wael, for joining us.
Thank you.